independent production, and I'm the producer and the host. I'm Sista YaYa Maureen Coleman. Our co-host is our brother Dean Flowers, who is the president of the Public Service Union. He's joining us now. And we thank you for coming to this space. It's a space where we meet most Thursdays. This is our 13th edition. And our sister Trisha Paris is our facilitator, and we appreciate what she has been doing the past 12 Thursdays. Today is the 13th, and we have regular participants. And so the way it's structured, every other week we invite a guest. This week we have a guest. Her name is Sister Nelma Mortis. And she's a known educator for many years, a lifelong learner, a researcher. I've known her since I was a teenager. Humble sister, a sister of value. No make it soft-spokenness fool you. She is a warrior queen. Good night, Sister Nelma. That's the official welcome.
Good night, Sista YaYa Maureen. That was too big.
that you that the sister, that you that. And so in the first half, our brother Dean and I will engage Sister Nelma, and then from 7:30 to 8, other participants may engage her. Let me be very clear. This is a space for knowledge exchange. It's based on lived experience, research, scholarship, literature. It's a space where we come once a week to have this type of reasoning rooted in workers' rights. In the past, you may hear of study circles or discussion circles, but that's what this space is for, once a week. And then you can share the information with other people, invite others, use it to organize in your respective areas of leadership. Sister Nelma, Breda Dean, good night.
Good night, Sister YaYa, and good night to our guests in studio. Sister YaYa, me at the palm my phone, I try resolve my computer issues. So you can't see my lovely smile at this current moment.
Okay.
But I want to say good evening to our viewers or listeners, and for those, of course, who normally take the time out to look at the show and to review and to offer comments. Always a pleasure. Looking forward to hearing from our guests tonight, and to see how we can speak a little on the importance of lifelong learning, no, and why we should all adapt such a practice, if I can call it that, in our personal growth and development as we traverse through this thing called life. So good night once again, and thanks for creating this space for us to reason.
Thank you, Brother Dean. Sister Nelma, how would you define lifelong learning rooted in workers' reality?
Okay, good night, everyone. Good night to the general public. I think it's a privilege for me to be here sharing with you my passion, which is education, and as human being, why it is important for us to embrace this concept of lifelong learning.
Put your camera on, voices.
Huh?
Put your camera on so we can see you.
Oh, you need my camera?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. Can you see me?
Not yet.
Yeah, put it on.
I'm not see you yet.
I don't know what's happening.
I
put it on just now.
Anyways, go ahead, attack.
All right. I think it was, I'll begin with this quote from Albert Einstein, who once said, once you stop learning, you start dying. Very important. Let's look at the history of lifelong learning. I think it was bred out of adult education, where they look at post-vocational training and retraining of adults, which is basically what we want to reflect on tonight. Lifelong learning was introduced in Denmark in 1971, and then in 1990, UNESCO adopted it and promoted lifelong learning as a way of helping individuals cope with the rapid change in society. So that was conceptualized by UNESCO back then, but it's so very relevant today, even under the extreme circumstances that we are coexisting. And what it means simply is that learning takes place from the cradle to the grave. It's an everlasting part of our life. Living and learning always intertwined. And it's a survival way, especially now when we look at our financial crisis. And lifelong learning creates new opportunities and change the future for individuals, for their organizations or their workplace, and for society. So basically, that is what is referred to as lifelong learning. We know that learning can take place under different circumstances: formal learning, informal learning, and self-directed learning. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Do you think that how long have you been an educator within the Belize education system, Sister Nelma?
That will make you guess my age.
That's okay, you look good, no matter.
Over 30 years.
I tell somebody, I mean, once I 30 in a while, I'm sure I say, I know that at least 20 to 25 years. Do you feel that the education system, the formal education system in Belize, prepares students to be lifelong learners?
In 1990, the government of Belize had adopted this concept from UNESCO, which is a core part of the philosophy of education for Belize. However, I don't think it is cemented. Why I say that is because I believe that when we define education, we define it within a certain confinement, or whether or we looked at it that it should occur in childhood and that it should take place within a classroom. But when UNESCO defined that, UNESCO says it should take place throughout life and in a range of situations. So learning does not always have to occur within a classroom space. And that, I believe, is where our education system focus on formal learning. But then why don't we look at the traditions? Why don't we look at informal type of learning? There are other ways that we learn. And how do we get a person to learn to learn? Whether that classroom is there or not, or whether that teacher or that facilitator is there or not. How do we get someone to learn to learn? And that's one of the fundamental principles of the UNESCO's definition of lifelong learning. Let me say this: knowledge cannot be anchored solely in one phase in a person's life or in a single place. So when we finish a kind of certification, a 4-year school, a primary school, learning takes place after that. You hear people often say that the graduation begins when you go out there and start experiencing life. So there is definitely a need to rethink when in people's life education should be provided and the field that education should cover. And that I think is where we are falling short. Another thing I must say is that the period and the fields should complement each other and be interrelated in such a way that all people can get the most out of their own specific educational environment all throughout their lives, not only confined to a classroom or to the education system.
Let me ask one more question and give the mic to Breda Dean. How would an individual know that they're learning?
All right. Let me see if I can define the concept of learning. When learning takes place, it means that there is a change in behavior or attitude or mindset. If that doesn't occur, then learning has not taken place. Listen to what I said, mindset, because some of us have some serious mindset. So there has to be a change in behavior, attitude, or in your mindset.
Good, Breda Dean.
Yes, Sister YaYa. Yeah. I'm learning. Thanks to the sister. And I want to I just make a mention of a couple of points in terms of what she has said. And her last point in terms of behavior and mindset. Um, that seems to be, in my humble view, yeah, one of the biggest challenges um, uh, that I observe, why I think we are not learning as a people, because changing one's behavior is one of the most difficult things. Even, and then again, she spoke about changing one's mindset. And perhaps I will ask this question: how is that possible? Does that has to be innate, or is there some switch that we can flip on to create this kind of change in the people that we interact with on a daily basis? Take, for example, myself. I am in a union setting, I'm in a public sector setting. I'm trying to learn every day. But one of my challenges is, how do you also switch on that switch with those around you for us to understand the concept that you said? Learning is from cradle to grave. You never stop learning. But it cannot be just having these conversations where you go in your ears and go to your ears. It has to be learning and putting in place the new knowledge, practicing the new I mean, trying new skills, of course, and trying new things, and then learning to be better and to be more more skilled in different areas other than that formal education setting that you might have gone to school for. So how do we switch on that switch?
How to create lifelong learning. Before I go to that, I must say that again, UNESCO has defined 4 pillars of education: an individual learning to know, an individual learning to do, meaning developing those skills like you so rightly said just now, and individual learning to live together, and individual learning to be. And when we say be, we're talking about that human person, that person that has self-confidence and self-esteem and dignity and all the rest of it. In
Can you
our
say those
education,
4 things again?
learning to know,
Yes.
learning to do, developing your skills and so forth and so forth. Learning to live together, and learning to be. Be as in being a human being, being that person with self-confidence and so forth and so forth. I'm still trying to figure out how to get on my
Your camera. On
my
your
camera.
on your screen, on the bottom there should be a camera and then the mic.
That's what I'm not seeing. I have used the I'm used to Zoom, but I don't know what's happening here. Okay, video setting. See, I don't want to go through this and then knock you off.
Yes. But better not worry about that. If somebody else know, please tell me. If somebody else got more technical skill than me, because I only saw you look for the camera. But yes, go ahead, sis. The knowledge you're sharing, as much as we want
Yes.
to.
So I was saying, yes, UNESCO stated that there are 4 pillars that of education, and those 4 pillars I just named. Now, human beings, as we so rightly said, there is this person called Howard Gardner, who spoke to 7 types of intelligences that we possess. You have the individuals who are linguistic, and some of us might have it stronger than others. So when we talk about the linguistic intelligence, we're talking about writing, reading, telling stories, being oral, being the speaker on the stage, that kind of thing. Then you have those that have logical, mathematical, like patterns, categories. They know spatial relationship, arithmetic problems, strategies, games, experiments. And then you have people like Michael Jordan, which was a special intelligence, body sensation, athletics, dancers, craft, our artists. Those are people that are bodily kinesthetic, intelligent. And then we have those who have spatial, like they know images, they can draw, they can daydream, and so forth. We have the musical group, which are those that sing, do the drumming, songs, and so forth. And then we have some people who are interpersonal. I think I'm very strong in this one. They're leaders among their peers. They're good at communicating and understanding others' feelings and motives and so forth. And then you have the intrapersonal intelligence. They may be shy, but very aware of their own feelings and are self-motivated. And then the last, which is a new one that just came on board, is the naturalistic intelligence, those who collect and analyze their natural surroundings, spiritual existence, their moral intelligence, that kind of thing. Now, all of us should have some of these, and for these 7, including the 8 that I just mentioned that is recently being discovered, is that some of us are stronger in one area than the next. Now, why I made mention of those is because there are some key competencies, because now I'm speaking to workers, that workers must have. They should be able to communicate in their mother tongue or their native language. They should be at least communicating one other foreign language. Anywhere all over the world, these are some of the criteria that are expected. They must have mathematics competence and basic competence in science and technology. They must be digitally competent, which I think the pandemic has caught us off guard, because a lot of people were not prepared when we had to go fully digital. Even our national university, I'll hold that one back, but those are some of the things. Another one is this one, and this is where your answer will be answered, Brother Dean, is learning to learn. How do we learn to learn? Learning to learn is the ability to pursue and persist in learning, to be able to organize your own learning and manage your time and your information, both for yourself and for others that you work with. So it's basically an awareness of your own learning processes and needs, and identifying those available opportunities so that you learn. It's the ability to overcome obstacles in order to learn successfully. That is what learning to learn simply means. Now, I say all that to say that some people don't need the teacher in the classroom to learn. They have certain skills. Sista YaYa was just or trying to promote one, which is research, which is a passion of mine, where you go and you research and you interpret and you tear apart and you analyze and you get meaning from it from different perspectives. That is what I think we need to promote in our adult life. How do we learn to learn, and what skills must we develop to gain more knowledge, new knowledge? How do we process it? How do we assimilate it? And skills. How do we find guidance? One of the big problem that from an educator's perspective is that I see teachers, they teach, but one of the things I find lacking is that they don't know to be resourceful. Where do I go if I need knowledge on let's say, mechanic. Where do I go and find that kind of information? Where do I need to go if I need new knowledge in, let's say, the same digital technology? Those are some of the things that is lacking in terms of us learning to learn. How do we learn to learn? I don't know if I confused you, I lost you there, but is there, did you get exactly what I'm saying? And also I must say, is to build on your prior learning and life experiences. So it's not like you're going to throw out what you already know, but how do you build on what you already have? How do you build on what you left from Fort Farm? What do you add to that? And that has to be in context with your home, your work, your education, and your training. Last but not least, I must say that motivation and confidence are crucial for an individual's competence.
I get it, Brother Dean, you get it?
Yes, Sister YaYa. Most definitely. And like I said, this for me is a learning session because just the simple subject, lifelong learning, we've all engaged in this or I believe we have all engaged in this in some shape or form, some way. But I would have never thought that transitioning from somebody who has a degree in accounting that I would be engaged or primarily focused now on trying to expand my knowledge in other issues such as the labor issue, labor laws. So that's a part of transitioning and becoming more knowledgeable in other aspects than just the academic setting. I as well. I growing up, and when I look back now, when I look at the topic and look back at my own experience, I see whereby I came from a secretarial background. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I certainly had no passion for science. So I went into secretarial work, administrative assistance. That's where I got my first degree in. And then I transitioned to accounting. And of course, I have a huge, she spoke about skills and Michael Jordan. I come from a strong football background. So all of this now gives me a better appreciation for the topic lifelong learning. That it gives you, and I want to encourage it as well because, and I think that it's a topic that, honestly, YaYa, I'm not quite sure that it's a topic that is even discussed. And so I'm very grateful that you brought on Sister Mortis tonight to speak about this because I think this is an excellent opportunity for people to understand that what we're going through with COVID is also promoting lifelong learning, and we should embrace this concept and grow more as individuals to expand with knowledge on everything. You made a very important point to me today, YaYa. Some people leave school or leave college and never pick up one book since. And that's something real, and that's why we're in a challenge right now, whereby we say, how do we communicate with people? Because people don't want to pick up nothing more than a page long. And so when you said that, it resonated with me. So I'll pass it back to you, YaYa. Those are my comments for now.
Can I inject something with what he just said? There are old and new answers to how we learn. One of the old way was, and how we are taught, especially in school, is that knowledge is organized in a stable, hierarchical structure that can be treated independent of one another. Like, for example, we go to school, we do math, then we do economics, then we do history, just in independent areas or fields. However, and I think if educators would get the catch of this, we should now recognize that knowledge is organized ecologically. A lot of these disciplines are integrative and interactive and requires actively doing. But that is not something that is done a lot. our brain is wired to make connection and to see the networking. But however, when we are taught in like little silos, little segmented, fragmented ways. And you imagine the brain having to take 8 different subjects that are not, the teacher don't help you to see the interrelations at the end of the day. That is something that I think we need to understand, that knowledge is organized in ecologically. I teach history at high school, and I often say to my students, well, I'm out of the classroom for a little while now, but I say to students, or this is something that I promote, do not read a piece of paper and think that that is the sole answer, or that is the one perspective. That's just one person's perspective. When you go to the highest extreme of education, which is like a doctorate, you get to understand that there is no one answer to something, and there are many different perspectives. It's how you take those different perspectives and formulate a meaning and give meaning to it. That is what research is about. And a lot of us don't understand that, or we don't have that ability. We read a piece of paper and we believe that it is gospel.
Let me ask this last question. We have another 4 minutes. The truth is that many of us, for example, in Belize, don't know our root line or ancestral stories. So what we know are colonizers' narrative. It's a British value system, a British history, a British understanding, and we buy into that, and we think that that is the only story. And so when you hear anything outside of that, cognitive dissonance set in for a lot of way. It was for me. It's less, but it's still there.
So right.
How do you balance that from your experience?
You said a critical thing, and that is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't change their mindset. Human beings like their comfort zone. That's how we are born, we are wired. And so when you expose them to something new, when you take them out of the cave, the sun too bright, some of them definitely will run back into the cave. I think that Socrates may try that experiment. What I was saying, that whenever you are whenever you're exposed to a piece of knowledge or a perspective, like for example, we have the European perspective of what it was like back then. I think it was Breda Dean who said earlier that he got a lot of information orally. We do not do a lot of documentation. We are a very oral society. That is the reason right now where I think we are having that. Well, I'm waiting to see it play out, the controversy with Lila Vernon and who wrote the song situation there. The Garifuna are saying, some Garifuna people are saying that was something that they had from way back then. I don't know. But I'm saying all that to say that we know the Europeans' perspective. Do we have an idea of what the Mayan perspective were? And is there anything documented? If we could go and research that. And then when you hear from maybe the same, the Tainos or the Kalinagos, have their perspective. You read all the 4 different perspectives, and then you as a person will be able to definitely rule out in your own thinking. We have a creative mind. We're born under creation. So in that sense now, you have to have certain skills to assimilate what is good, what is necessary for discussion, and what is maybe not as factual as you may think. That takes a lot of practice and reading and assimilating and analyzing. In education, we have the Bloom's taxonomy, where we teach very low level like knowledge and recall, but we don't take it a step up where we get people to interpret, where we get people to analyze, where we get people to synthesize, where we get people to be creative. Those are some of the skills, and I heard this morning the Minister of Education announcing on behalf of the University of Belize that there will be a course on critical thinking, how to get people to critical think. I believe critical thinking, personally, I believe it should be integrated in any area that you teach. You could take any material, any knowledge and break it apart and be critical about it. So that's a good thing. Sharing that this morning, I said, okay, at least there is some way that we will get people to start, you know, managing their own learning and learning rather than just Sista YaYa. Traditionally, there was this thought that we learn best passively by listening and watching. When we have students, being a supervisor of teachers, when we have students who do not listen passively and start questioning the knowledge, they often have clashes with teachers who are not open-minded. And so sometimes young students retreat into their shell or back into the cave because adults are not open-minded and do not allow them to question and interrogate their reality and their knowledge and so forth.
Okay, good. It's time. Excellent first half hour. Sister Nelma, it's now time for you to engage the other participants. Breda Dean usually leads this segment. Breda Dean, it's open mic time for you.
Good night to our guests. Tonight we have some of our regular visitors to the show. I want to say good night, Sister Tates, Brother Enriquez, Brother Gibson, Brother Tate, Sister YaYa. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so as Sister YaYa rightly said, in the second half hour of the show, we invite you to pose questions to the guests or to make comments as it relates to what she has shared with us. So I'll now pass it on to anyone who would like to jump in to make a comment or ask a question of Sister Mortis' presentation tonight so far. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Sister YaYa. I see, and then after that, we may go to Brother Gibson. I think he was trying to come in. So Sister YaYa, you can go ahead.
I really like this topic tonight because a lot of our children, indeed, they don't like to think. And so we need to get them to think. I always say to my daughter, you have all rights to question your teacher and ask any question that you feel that wasn't answered, for you to rephrase it in a different way for them to understand, to answer your question. And all you have to do is ask it respectfully. You know, have a level of respect when you when you ask that question. So tonight, I really like this topic, even though I kind of joined in late. It's very interesting, and I think it's very informative as well. Because of the critical thinking, that is why when we say to our children or to anybody, how was your day today? Everybody's response is always good. And so my next question would be, so why was it good? You know, sometimes we need to probe people to answer in a different format than what we're really accustomed to. And indeed, like what Miss Nelma said, we need to get out of our comfort zone. But when we come out of our comfort zone, it also creates a problem for us, because then there are people or persons around who will say, oh, you think you're better than people because you want to ask all of them questions. And so sometimes it creates doubt in the lack of better word, I would say shy person or shy people. I'm very vocal. And so if I have a question to ask, I will ask it. And if I don't believe I get my response, I will ask it again in a different way. But not everybody is like me to ask that question in 5 different ways to get a response that you believe should be the answer to any question. And so we need to push, especially our youths, to be able to go with this critical thinking and analyze things. When it comes to the research aspect of it, a lot of us aren't taught research. And so, okay, if the teacher said the building is blue, then mommy can, when you come home, because the teacher said the building is blue, mommy can't tell you red even though you read. And so we need to be careful as well as teacher, how we bring about this information to our students. Because at the end of the day, as much as it might be some valid information, it might create problems because what my teacher said, that because my teacher never wrong. And so, you know, putting summing all that together, we really need to make the critical thinking happen in all aspects, especially with our youths growing up, where really not to think any at all and just go with the flow from day to day. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comment, Sister YaYa. I think your comment on critical thinking is on point. Again, these are catchphrases that we hear day in, day out, you know, and we just use them loosely, but we don't focus on how do we get to, in fact, create an enabling environment for our brothers and sisters or our children, as you rightly said, to engage in those type of practices. Brother Gibson, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure, certainly. Unless there is further comment along the line of what we're talking about, what Sister YaYa is talking about, I would just like to look at things from another perspective. Unless we want to continue along this line in terms of the whole issue of how to stimulate critical thinking, and not it's going to happen at the university. Well, obviously, it's not exclusive to the university. It's something that can be taught, and it's not a complex subject. And it's a question of how that can be propagated in such a way, with specific reference to the context of the union and its major challenge to create awareness and consciousness of the reality of unionism in Belize, the state of labor in Belize in relation to the national power dynamics and so on. I'm very happy to hear that Sister Nelma has a background in history, because just last week we were talking in terms of history and its relevance, and that it is a medium through which critical thinking is necessary and can be stimulated. Here we were talking about how to make the connection between, using the context of economic history, which is the linking of 2 disciplines to look at a particular, analyze a particular area, the history of labor and the role played by labor in the economic history of Belize. So certainly the thoughts and the structure and the components of what goes into critical thinking, lifelong learning are things that are highly relevant to what the union is engaged in. I think there's quite a bit of synergies that can be gotten from continuing a link with Sister Nelma to assist you in strategizing in terms of how you do your own mobilization in the union, bearing in mind that ultimately I think it is a political initiative in a non-party political sense. It is creating an awareness, and out of it a strategy, and out of it action that strengthens the role of the union, or strengthens the role of labor in our society.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for those comments, Brother Gibson. Is there anyone else that would like to participate? Or Sister Nelma, would you like to make a comment or a response to the comments from Sister YaYa and Brother Gibson?
I was reflecting on Mr. Gibson's thought of the union. Now, I am not always actively involved with public service union, but I was with the teachers union. And I think one of the key thing that can be done to address what you spoke to is in terms of the union and how do critical think is to have this vision of a learning union. What is possible, what might be possible, and simply by training the individual so it can happen as a result of having a whole learning organization. We tend to not, we have organization, but we don't see it that it's possible to facilitate the learning of all its members and continuously transform the organization through the same learning that we are talking about. And I think this is a big step. I wasn't aware of it, but by what Sister YaYa explained, it's a very good move because now you can formulate a vision of what might be possible to simply train and continue training the whole organization, the whole union, so that learning can, or that you can transform the union or the members of that union and transform the organization itself so that the organization can have can be empowered, can more be empowered. I don't know if what I said makes sense to you.
Most definitely, most definitely.
And when I say that, it requires a learning organization requires total employee or total everybody involvement. It's a process of collaboration conducted and collectively accountable change. So we said, this is our objective and these are the changes that we want to see. We put the activities in place to make that change and we hold each other accountable for those changes. And then that also will direct a shift towards somewhat our shared values as union members or shared principles. That would need a lot of, I mean, put it in a strategic way. I think it will be something good for the union because a learning organization is continually expanding its capacity to create its future. That is what is killing or crippling a lot of organizations, the very system, and this comes from, this refers to government, to from government organization to the union, so all various companies and organizations. We do not have this, what should I say, this practice, this part of us that we continue learn or create a learning organization. What we do is merely, we do it to survive.
Yeah.
Whatever the organization exists about, it's basically just for survival. We need to adapt adaptive learning. And when we have adaptive learning, then we get generative learning. And that simply means learning that enhance our capacity to create and to keep evolving. Our organizations are not evolving, and that is what is crippling us. Technology, there so much years ahead, but the system and the structures that we have are way behind. And that is something that we must be abreast of. And This is a very good conversation.
Yeah, very, very powerful comments there, sis, in terms of having now learned, but limiting ourselves and merely participating to survive, as you rightly said, rather than adapting and being able to effectively participate in these new adventures of life. So again, it goes back to what you said the 4 pillars of learning were, and we could tie that into any organization, anything we do. Learning to know, again, giving people or providing those tools that are required now for us to understand the environment in which we're in. Learning to do, equipping people with skills. Learning to be, how do I be a good whatever I want to be? And of course, learning to live together, being accepting of everybody ideas and so on. So thanks very much for highlighting those.
Add on 2 cents.
Yeah. Go ahead, sis.
Yes, I have this book. You can see it. It's Exploding the Myths, Volume 1, Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Browder. And on chapter 8, it's called The World's Best Kept Secret. I'll just read a little bit. It says, learning to develop critical thinking skills is the first lesson one must master in pursuit of the other education. Critical thinking skills allow people to become aware of hierarchical levels of thought, which gives them the capacity to assume greater control over their lives.
Right.
The 3 essential levels of cognitive thought are the literal, where one learns to accept all information at face value and never looks beneath the surface for additional details. 2, the inferential, where one learns to infer or read between the lines and sees the hidden or dual meaning in information that is presented. And 3, the evaluative, where one learns to make an intelligent decision based upon the comparison of various sources of information, particularly those drawn from one's own personal experience. Final paragraph. The objective of critical thinking is to learn how not to take all information literally, to read between the lines for deeper understanding, and then evaluate that information by comparing it with other sources of knowledge. This process expands one's mind and opens up new vistas for learning. It is the means by which one may be resurrected from mental death and experience a profound rebirth of consciousness.
Correct. It's the same thing I'm saying. You take different pieces of knowledge and you evaluate that and you pull your meaning, draw meaning from it, rather than just seeing one perspective and seeing that as your gospel. It is also similar to Bloom's taxonomy. What you just read is similar to Bloom's taxonomy.
Thanks for sharing that, Sister YaYa. You are the library woman, girl. You got books, YaYa. You got books. Your mic, YaYa. Your mic says.
To go along with what Sister Nelma is saying, in the home that I grew up in, both my parents are avid readers. So without knowing it at the time, from conception, we were taught to love learning. Now, at the time, I didn't know that that's what was happening. I was just living and being. I was telling somebody today, I said, listen, I don't know if my father I like that he said, but I tell the truth, right? I say, I grew up in the 70s. I say, I find Playboy magazine, and I never know. I was excited, of course, I'm curious because they have naked lady, but the material, the knowledge, the story, I never know that they have thing in there beside what we call slackness. And so I was really like, wow, that you could learn from that. And then we grew up in a family where Time magazine, National Geographic, Reader's Digest, True Story, Mills and Book, those are the Enquirer. They're like every week, every month. That was a natural part of read. So we developed the love for reading and question and have. That's just how I grew up. So by the time I finished and at 6, I know a lot of things. And then because I'm an outgoing person, I involve in a community life. And so yes, the love for reading, whatever children are exposed to in their formative years, pretty much You know what I mean? I can't change, you know. But conception to at least 6 years, no, Sister Nelma. Sister
I think,
Nelma?
yes, I was saying, I think I was reading that Miss Sister Pitts have her hand up, has her hand up.
Sorry, I missed it. Go ahead, Musile.
Yes, you may need to unmute, Sister Pitts.
Right, everybody. I'm getting in my 2 cents before the session ends. First, I must say that I like the topic. And Sister Nelma, you have certainly enlightened us and given us a lot of things to think about. And I am remembering what Dean said, that he was academically qualified, but he is still learning. And he also mentioned about, and I know that this is one of the things that he seems to be concerned about, which I always express some concern about, getting those around you to have the same fire that you have, to recognize that there are certain things that need to be done that are not being done. You have a vision that you don't seem to think that they have. And how do you get them to see what you see in order to reach the goals that you think that the organization should reach? Brother Dean, is that not your concern?
That is certainly one of my concerns, and it's not so much that perhaps people don't share the vision. It goes back to what Sister Mortis said, that people get involved, but it's mere on the surface. I just say, you know, this is survive in case something happens, but they're not intimately, actively engaged. Right. So when she made that comment, I resonate in where we are in several things in life. And for me, at this stage in my life, where unionism is concerned, people are it, but it's merely for as a survival game. I should in case fall back pan, but
what I have found that in situations that I have been in as like the head of a department or an office, that when you share knowledge, I find that people are usually, no, I don't know if I'm going out on a limb, but I found that the persons around me were very eager to learn. Even if it was not their field. If you know law and you share law with them, I found that generally people were eager to learn and to understand, because it's life. You know, whatever you are sharing with them, they are understanding clearer. Certain things are being clarified in the life that they are living. And I find that if you do that with persons around you, they contribute more to the organization. They have a greater interest. But then if you are doing that to those around you, then you recognize that there needs to be structure. There needs to be some structure in place where that empowering that you as an individual you are doing, that can be done on a systematic level. And so it brings me back to structure, that if you have organizations that are not structured, when you have that structure now, you are able to put in place that learning component, that teaching component. Those were my thoughts that I was having as you spoke, Brother Dean. Yes. The structure needed for organizations, and when that is there, then the constant and systematic learning. And if you don't have the resources, well, then you reach out.
Yeah.
Like the unions, I know that in the past, I think, I don't know what's happening now, but in the past, I think that we used to have more persons coming in to help us. People from the Caribbean would be coming in and helping us with our educational program. I don't know if you have a women's committee now. Do you have a women's committee in the Public Service Union at this moment?
Yes, we still do have a women's committee. We still have a young workers committee, and actually, as we speak, coincidentally, the Public Service International is having a forum for women and youth in the month of September. So yes, we're still actively engaged there. But I just want to state that you are right. Where union is, and this does not apply to public service union alone. I think across the board, and even up to the point of the NTUCD, we are not taking advantage of our affiliation with these international bodies, plain and simple. I think that we've dropped the ball where that is concerned, and the opportunity remains there. It's still there, but we somehow but we simply have not taken advantage of the opportunity to be able to access those resources and those trainings that are needed to create an interest in learning, because we have to bring back people interest in learning about what we're involved and engaged in. So I will say here every week, Mr. Pitts, and I do take note of where we need to go, and especially putting in place those structures that you spoke of. So anybody else would like to contribute to the conversation, or have any question for our guest tonight?
I see Mr. Tate wrote in the chat, none for men. Well, that should be. Maybe there should be one for men. I might know through the Women's Committee, there was a lot of training done there. A lot of educational programs were done through the Women's Committee in the past. And there used to be a very large annual conference when it was Women's Week. I think they started out with week and now they are at a month. But when that time came around, there was a very large conference where women from all over the country, from different unions, they got together and there was an educational program. And as Brother Tate is saying, maybe the thought should be given to forming one for men. Equality, gender equality.
Sorry, Mr. Gibson.
Sure, go ahead.
I personally like the idea of the union taking its position in formulating a learning organization. Be transformative rather than just being renovative. I think Ms. Pitts just a while ago spoke about different avenues from which learning should occur. I know it costs, but having these annual conferences with specific themes that is of need is one way to go. And I often say that the unions, including the teachers union, need to start thinking about hosting these annual big conferences, because that's where you can empower your members. Just that I wanted to throw light on.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brother Gibson.
I know we're running out of time, but there's a matter of to talk about two quick things. You mentioned the teachers union just now, and my observation is that organization, I describe it as an efficient democratic organization. It is a learning organization, and it has played a pivotal and critical role in getting change to happen in terms of governance in Belize. And so I think there are lessons to be learned even from the use of these annual meetings, sometimes and other meetings and workshops that occur that create the consciousness and awareness and the sense of unity and so on. And so I would say that the lesson that there should be a close integrating with what they do to learn from how they do it in terms of what happens with the wider labor organizational structure, which is the MPUCB. The other thing that I wanted to say, and it kind of moves away a bit from the whole lifelong learning theme, but it's still very relevant. And I wanted to take advantage of the fact that you, Nelma, were very much involved in the formulation and the preparation, the research that went into the Gale study on male social violence in Belize. And I just wanted to, looking at where things are today, we're hearing about another state of emergency. A lot of things pass through my mind in terms of what needs to be done to really tackle this problem that is mainly affecting Afro-Belizeans. I can tie that back historically, and I've seen that there have been various interventions. There was a thing called Operation Restore Belize, there have been various other moves. Can you say what has been the deficiency in all of this, and what is lacking and what needs to be done? It cannot be done it might take a bit of time, but it's something very concise in terms of helping us to focus on what to think about going forward, because obviously what we're seeing now is rather ad hoc, piecemeal, more focused on the role of the police, not innovative in terms of other interventions that could squarely address this intractable problem so far.
It's I like the fact that you said that it is some still learning. That research was done 10 years ago, and we're still at the same spot searching for, or I guess chasing our tails. Like the facts, who is looking for, I don't know. But until people, ontological security are in place, there is no way we can correct it. And the police department, the police, and I think Gail mentioned this 10 years ago, takes the face of the state, and the police seems to be the solution, the temporary solution for the problem. We know that we have a wide gap between the rich and the poor. There is no doubt. And I just finished my doctoral thesis, and I looked at Southside schools. And when you hear what these principals are enduring and the unsafe, insecure, ecological conditions of those schools, and I hear the minister keep saying that the schools are in dire state. I can't share my my thesis as yet because it belongs to the University of the West Indies, but I can tell you that the situation has gotten even worse. And it's just a matter of time. I hate to say this publicly, but it can be just a matter of time when we have one of those Columbine activities at one of those schools. Because the school exists in harsh ecological conditions, and the condition of the community becomes a part of the school. It is not separated. And we have a lot of community work to do. We had recommended, and as the government at the time had established the umbrella that could have coordinated the effort of how to make some correction. But then that organization, which was Restore Belize, lost the vision and minimized itself to basically like an NGO, in my opinion, and did not coordinate the efforts. We need leadership. We need leadership to coordinate police, community, education, and welfare. And there is no one that you cannot leave it up to health and human development. You cannot leave it up to the police department as security. And so you need a comprehensive plan. It needs leadership. And that's basically what I can say. It needs leadership and it needs political will. If you all notice now that the problems are now, because we have heavy police handed in Belize City, it's like you drop a big stone in a bucket of water and the water spill over. Well, it is spilling over because if you all notice, PG is going through a lot, and it's the same element that escaped Belize are in PG. So we cannot continue to do piecemeal. We cannot continue to do short term. We have to have a comprehensive plan that has political will, resource investment. People need ontological security. People need to eat to know that they are safe. They can be gainfully employed, and they have you know, they have to be anything fancy, but they have a shelter over their heads. They can get food.
It is going to be one of the main strategic pillars of your thesis. A prescription still needs to be driven through that this is what is needed. It's not been taken on. The lack of leadership, the politicization of what is happening and so on, are still recurring problems. How to deal with it, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Can I just quickly make a comment though?
Most definitely, Brother Hubert, go right ahead.
Yeah, because what I see with this whole matter of critical thinking, I think that what is absent or what needs to be first and foremost really is a vision for where we want to go. I think that's going to drive the impetus towards critical thinking and perhaps even thinking outside of the box. I think that outside of the box thinking perhaps might be a bit different from critical thinking. But what I see is the necessity for us to move into a era where we our mind towards training for development or perhaps for survival, because it isn't rocket science to see that in fact people who have made it in life very well are not necessarily persons who have gone high in education. All the Bill Gates, all those persons are really some of them are high school dropouts, but they have been able to find some way in which they're going to actually survive. And I think at the end of the day, what we want to do really to a great extent is to survive and to bring up the whole level of society so that we can actually move the society forward. And recently we saw where there are businessmen who actually were able to explore going to space because they're seeing they see potential in that venture. So I think more than critical thinking, I think what we need to do really and truly is this whole idea of thinking outside the box. And that in itself needs for one to have vision, because the vision is going to drive that looking at different ways in which you're going to do things, not necessarily so I think that's a dimension that I think we need to consider, having a vision to drive which is going to drive, in my opinion, all of these different things to bring about a different paradigm. That is what I think.
If I may, I'll say that it is a critical thinking oftentimes that creates a vision that causes you to step out and get out the box, because you are appraising context and saying, well, you know, this isn't working. So there's a relationship between them. They're not isolated concepts at all. Yeah.
Exactly, and I would want to remove the box, because the box sometimes is an obstacle. We have to create learning societies, and that will be a challenge for the future, how to create those learning societies. But we have to be mindful that the future starts today. Yeah.
So as we prepare to wrap up, let me throw this out there. Earlier tonight, Sister Mortis spoke about this being placed in a classroom setting with this 8 different subject matter, and Brother Hubert spoke about made a kind of reference to whether or not all of that makes sense. And as a parent with children, should we, and I don't really want to get into the whole conversation of the whole curriculum and all of that, but I am asking myself, does it make sense to put your child through what? 8 years of primary school, 4 years of high school, probably another 4 years of university? Does all of this make sense now that as we learn, as we reflect on the topic tonight, lifelong learning and understanding that a lot of these life skills and these survival skills in terms of what Brother Hubert spoke about, the Bill Gates and all these high school dropouts. I want to pose this question. It makes sense I put my picnic through 16 years of school, or basically teach her to read and write and add and subtract, and now try to steer her along a path that would yield success.
All right. I keep hearing us saying that people like Bill Gates and those people did not have formal learning. We often hear people say that you could be educated and still not, still in the box. Learning doesn't necessarily have to take place in a formal situation, but if your society, the context of your society and the other social contexts that the children are exposed to, Brother Gibson just spoke about the curfew on Southside Belize City. Those children that are growing up on Southside Belize City are a product of that same environment. So you can't expect nothing better. They are a product. Unless you have safety net around them, then you can make that change, which I just said need leadership and a comprehensive plan. But you have to understand that learning can be formal, it can be intentional, it can be informal, and it can be unexpected. Intelligent people, many times unexpected learning takes place where they self-study, they explore, and they do internet surfing. You have the formal where they sit in class, they have e-learning, we have meetings and so forth. In the intentional one, which is the curriculum that you spoke about, has to do with reading and the coaching and the mentoring, and fortunate or whether unfortunate, that should have provided us with skills to critical think and evaluate, and those components of critical thinking. That is not fully what is happening, and it's not only in Belize, it's a worldwide thing that education go all over the place. And then the last one has to do with informal, where your community, your teaming, your playing, your traditions that are passed on from generation to generation. So you cannot confine yourself to saying that learning should be only formal, or you should send a child through an 8 years situation. Yes, if you send your child through 8 years plus 4 plus another 4, it simply means that you will choose or guide your child along that journey where whatever they are learning will be useful, because education and development are linked. You cannot, like, all right, let me give a typical example. I say to high school principals, I'm now working out at Orange Walk. Why all the curriculum have to be similar? Why all the curriculum or the subjects that are being taught are the same countrywide, standardized? When in Orange Walk, where agriculture is the thing, sugar farming and the industry up there is a big thing for them. Why aren't there more agricultural studies inside the school to prepare and get students ready for those industries? Why is it that we have to do 12 CXCs? Because we know at the end of the fourth year, about 60% of those graduates, or 80 if you don't mind, will go directly to the world of work. Many of them will not be able to go to sixth form or continue on. Those are for other perspectives and so forth. So those are some of the kind of discussion, and I keep hearing recently the ministry had a discussion with the business community, the private sector, And they're saying that that link has to be made some more, because whatever education you are preparing for should be able to advance your society. And we are not doing that. We just keep the old British elite education system. Education should be more about participation rather than elitism. Makes sense to you all, I hope.
Yes. That makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So, Sister Mortis, do you agree with some of the changes that have been proposed by the Ministry of Education?
If I am agreeing with some of the
Proposed reform in the education sector.
yes, education is not static. One administration performed for 10 years. Education, not all. Everything is a continuum. The new administration came in and saw where they can capitalize on a new avenue. What I liked about the proposal is that it is very focused, focus specific. So yeah, I think I like some of the reforms that are there. It's how it is executed and implemented. That's another arm. The vision is there, the ideas are there, but how the execution is another thing.
I agree. I might like what I'm hearing too, but it is just to see if it will be executed. It is more focused indeed. And you know, you have people taking 20 CXCs and all of that. For what? Why?
Like a competition.
Yes.
It's a competition because of this elite mentality.
Yes.
We have the IT vets right now, and a lot of Belizeans do not utilize IT vets. Why? Because IT vet was once looked upon as people who couldn't learn. People want to wear necktie and jacket and coat. Where will we get our technical people from if we don't develop IT vet? The IT vet should turn into what used to be technical, with the lots of polytechnic to prepare for BL and WASA and BTL. We have lost that. Sometimes we adapt a lot of industrialized thing and then we throw the baby and the bath pan.
I think we're, to a large extent, I'm very much so influenced by where investments are going, and what follows in terms of preparation of the human resource to deal with that. And so, if you look at what has been happening, and it seems we're going back in the same direction, tourism is coming back again. And I'm not hearing of any major redirection of capital investments into other areas, productive areas. We hear about hospitality management. We hear, when I look at the coming together of the big banks, the Scotia and the Belize Bank, and where their monies are going, it's more into tourism, build a port, build condominiums of San Pedro and so on.
And service providers.
Yeah, and so in fact, then what you're looking for are skills which are very narrowly tied into that and not really needed. There are skills of requiring competence and so on. But you mentioned the BEL and the whole energy area in terms of where is the strategy which is saying that we're going to move into renewable energies and who will need and photovoltaics and so on. I don't see, even in the university, which has a key role to play in it, I don't see that coming together as yet. It's clear that it's going to happen, but I want to think that the Ministry of Education would be taking a key role in that What we're hearing now seems to be the rudiments of some transformation in that direction, but it's not clearly defined. And so linking capital with investments in education, capital formation or accumulation, investments in human resource development, the sort of underplaying of the role of the technical level that we have seen, and the same elitist concept that when you have to do that business administration, or you know, that sort of thing, where you have a lot of business administration people, but what is there to, what business is there to manage? And that's what the University of Belize has been churning out. I said that's the biggest faculty there. So, you know, these are the kind of things that I think need to be internationalized. If we really 400,000 people, that's the way to get it together.
Well, I know that there are some broad goals this morning, and well, I'm familiar with it before this morning, that speaks to the tertiary and the IT vets. It is not spelled out to the public as yet because, well, I believe there will be a document that will be shared or will be accessible on the websites. But I think you said a critical point in terms of industries and expansion, or where will we get our economic development, the benefits of economics or the economy, apart from the tourist industry. What else Belize has? What are we not harnessing enough to expand and to make more people employable? That is, I don't see any of the two governments having a clear vision as to how we will do that. And I guess it boils back to a whole Caribbean issue because of the lack of resources.
It all depends. It all depends who you ask when you speak about lack of resources, because I think a lot of people will say that every government, including this government, and this morning I think they had the launch of this economic forum, but we keep hearing this foreign direct investment, and of course that has to do with our ability, of course, to pay for all these imported goods. But the other side of that argument is that we have enough capital in country to create an environment for to export more, thereby. So the foreign direct investment does not have to come from new capital being pumped into the system, but can also come from our ability to grow from within and export out. But no government they talk that, and I just want like a rhetoric from both governments that we've seen that about growing from within. But really and truly, when you look at Belize and where we're placed, I mean, everybody knows that we could grow from within. Now we have the capital here, and this nonsense about foreign direct investment, which only yields, the only thing that yields the meager jobs to keep on the survive and repatriation of the profits. No real policy to ensure that 50% or 100% of those profits are reinvested to grow this economy from within. Folks, it has been that another area though, so we're not going there. Perhaps we could have our conversation there next time. But for now, I want to say thank you very much, Sista Mortis. Thank you very much for sharing with us your thoughts, your knowledge, your experience, your expertise on lifelong learning. I think that this is something that definitely we will have to revisit again and consider having another episode on to expand the conversation. And I want to thank everybody who joined tonight, who made a contribution. Your contributions are always welcome, and we appreciate your presence and we appreciate you participating. We are at 8:24, 24 minutes over time, but it was definitely worth it. And so with that, having said that, I want to say if you need to make your way home, please be safe journey home. And be safe. Remember, we're experiencing and understand our third wave, and it's not looking too good, not only for us, but for the entire world. So again, keep our prayers. Let's lift up our lead country in prayers, pray for our leaders, and pray for yourself. And with that, I'll say good night and God bless you all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
And thank you, Miss Nelma.
Anytime, Miss Fitz.
And success with your PhD.
Thank you. After defense, I think September 8th.
Congratulations on the PhD.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.
Good night, everybody.